Good morning, Chairman.
Good morning and welcome to the formal meeting of the Children and Young People Scrutiny Committee. My name is Councillor Rob Kendrick and I'm Chairman of the committee. Welcome to all members in attendance today and also officers attending both here in the Council chamber and on Teams. Unfortunately, the video feed for this meeting cannot be broadcast via our County Council website due to technical issues, but the meeting will be recorded and uploaded onto the website when the meeting is finished. I'd also like to welcome in a moment, I'm sure she'll join us, Councillor Mrs. Patricia Bradwell, Executive Councillor for Children's Services, Community Safety and Procurement, and we do have in the chamber Executive Support Councillor, Councillor Stephen Rowe, who is with us just now. I'd also like to welcome the following senior officers from Children's Services who are present in the Council chamber today. Heather Sandy, Executive Director, Children's Services, Martin Smith, Assistant Director, Children's Education, Joe Kavanagh, Assistant Director, Early Help. Good to see you with us this morning. Welcome also to Janice Spencer, Assistant Director, Children's Safeguarding, and Linda Dennett, Assistant Director, Children's Health and Commissioning, who are attending via Teams today. I'd like to begin with the usual health and safety announcement. There's no fire drill planned this morning. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, we need to leave the council chamber through the rear doors and leave the building through the reception to the front car park, and then we need to wait for further instructions. Can I remind everyone to please ensure their mobiles are turned off? I'm just about to do that myself. And other electronic devices so we don't have disturbance during the meeting. When you're invited to speak, can you please ensure you switch on your microphone? Otherwise, officers attending the meeting via Teams won't obviously be able to hear you. If you wish to ask a question during the course of the meeting, can you please raise your hand in the usual way, and my right-hand man, Vice Chairman Councillor William Gray, will make a note of those who wish to speak. Now, if we can move on to the business on today's agenda. Item 1 is apologies for absence and replacement members. Critina, can you have the names, please?
Thank you, Chairman. We've received apologies from Councillor Callum Cook, Councillor Susan Blackburn, and the Reverend Philip Johnson. And can I just say that Councillor Gary Taylor is replacing Councillor Cook for this meeting only. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor, and welcome to you, Councillor Taylor. Item 2 is declarations of members' interests. Members of the committee are reminded that they need only declare any relevant interests which have not been declared on their declaration of pecuniary interests form. Do any members wish to declare an interest? I think that's a no. Item 3 of the agenda are the minutes of the Children and Young People Scrutiny Committee held on the 3rd of September this year. And this is to confirm and sign the minutes from the meeting of the committee on the 3rd of September as a correct record. Do I have a proposer and a seconder, please? Councillor Whittington. First, Councillor Carter, thank you very much. We now need to vote on the minutes. You're voting whether you agree that the minutes are a correct record. All those in favour, please raise their hand. Thank you. Those against? Any abstentions? That's the minutes agreed. Thank you very much. Now move on to item 4. Welcome, Councillor Bradwell. Happens to all of us. We'll move on to item 4 now, which is announcements by the Chairman, Executive Councillors and Chief Officers. I've just got one announcement, and it's just to make everybody aware. I'm intending to have a 10-minute comfort break before item 6 today. So just to give you advance notice on that. Executive Councillor announcements. Do we have any from you, Councillor Mrs. Bradwell? Give you a chance to.
Not really. We've been quite busy though.
Could you microphone, please?
Surely, yeah. So we've been quite busy, but yeah, I just think there's lots happening. Obviously, we've got several papers on today, which are really important things for children's services. But obviously, we're planning the openings of all these special schools at some point, and that we keep getting dates and then they get cancelled. But no, so yeah, really busy. I don't know whether you know, but I'm on the LGA Children's Board, so I've been not down in London, online, with some of those meetings, and also in the East Midlands, meet with the East Midlands children's lead members 4 times a year, and obviously it's been very interesting. And Heather, she meets with the directors as well, but actually going through COVID, it was a good sort of balance line to see where we were in that. And obviously we had a meeting probably 2 Fridays ago now, and the real big issue for them is obviously the unaccompanied asylum seekers, because we're all getting larger numbers and things like that. So it's quite good to actually get I know I'm not telling you much, but it's quite good to get that balance about, is Lincolnshire way offline with some things? Are we in line with our colleagues in the East Midlands? So, but yes, so there is quite a bit happening. It isn't, we don't seem to have many days where we don't have a little chat about something, but it's all very good news. And, we haven't got any huge problems here, touch wood, in Lincolnshire that I know of. And so, I think, everybody, it's really good. Our officers work very hard, and, very happy to be alongside and working with yourselves as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's good to hear that post-pandemic, hopefully, if I can say that, we're in a good position, which is great news. Any chief officer announcements? Heather?
So if I can just build on what Councillor Bradwell said about the regional work. So I've recently taken over the lead for the regional improvement and innovation work. And I'm really pleased to say we've won a bid for £2.1 million for the region. And that's to do some work together around different aspects of children's services. It's really welcome funding. It'll allow us to do some collaboration about some areas that we're really interested in. As always, as that work starts to develop, we'll bring it here. We'll talk to you about what it is that we're doing and what innovation is coming from that. But in terms of the money we brought into the region, in comparison to other regions benchmarking, we did incredibly well. And that's testament to the work across the region to make sure the bid was evidence-based, that we could demonstrate that we could deliver on impact. So that regional work that I think has stood us in good stead for coming through the pandemic looks set to strengthen as we go forward.
That's excellent news. I mean, it's great to hear that we're involved in a dynamic region as regards these services. It's brilliant. Thank you very much, Heather, and more power to your elbow. Thank you. Any further announcements? No? Right, we'll move on to item 5 on the agenda, which is the update on building communities of specialist provision, the Together in Lincolnshire strategy. Now, this item sets out the progress made in year 3 of the strategic implementation of the Building Communities of Specialist Provision strategy. And I'd like to welcome Eileen McMorrow, Programme Manager, Special Schools Strategy, and Dave Pennington, Head of Property Development, who are attending today in the Council Chamber to present the report. I'd also like to welcome Sheridan Dodsworth, Head of Sdnd, who's attending today in the Chamber to help answer any questions. So it's now over to Eileen and Dave.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kendrick, and thank you very much for inviting us again for our 3rd annual update for the Building Communities of Specialist Provision strategy. Obviously, I'm very aware that most of the members in the chambers are very familiar with the strategy that we're providing you with a progress report on today, so I won't go into a huge amount of detail. Just to surmise to say that, again, further significant progress has been made in the last 12 months. The strategy was approved in 2018, with actually members very familiar with this, and that the capital programme and significant changes to the supporting systems have progressed over the last 12 months, so we'll provide an update on that. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Dave, who will provide details of the capital programme and developments within that, and then I will provide an update on the supporting systems. Just as a bit of a reminder, the strategy will make significant changes to the existing special education provision, creating an integrated and sustainable school system where pupils can attend a school as close to home as possible, providing with the right education, health and care. I'll pass over to Dave.
Thank you, Eileen. Sorry, excuse me. I do have a cough, but I have tested negative. Sorry, I need a huge faux pas then, but no, I have tested negative. So just if I do cough on the odd occasion, please forgive me. I'm just going to give you a very brief overview of some of the key risks that we're facing in terms of construction on the programme. And I will, after that, I'll show you a couple of images of progress. But again, based on the assumption that you've read the paper, I will give you be fairly brief. But do welcome any questions once Eileen's finished. As all of you will probably be aware, in the media at the moment, there are a number of headwinds which are making life difficult for the construction industry and indeed the economy at large at the moment. Supply chain volatility is something which is hitting us all. And what I mean by that is struggling with getting materials onto site from abroad or in this country. And there are a number of reasons for that. In fact, the former Governor to the Bank of England, Mark Carney, usefully and helpfully summarised this up in the media a couple of days ago. And there are three main reasons, really. One is energy prices, which is new. That isn't in this paper, but it is something that is affecting things. Brexit and the adjustments, the economic adjustment post-COVID. And in fact, section 1.1 on page 16 of your paper gives a number of reasons as to why we're struggling with headwinds at the moment. And again, happy to invite questions on that at the end. But I would like to move on, if possible, and just show you a couple of images of progress to date. And in fact, before I do that, I would quite like to say that despite the headwinds we've been experiencing in the last 12, 18 months due to COVID and various other reasons, we have made very good progress on site, working with our contractors, working collaboratively with all partners. I'm really impressed and really thankful, actually, that the schemes have continued and we've made such great progress. So if I could just come to Boston Endeavour first, which is section 2.1.4 in your paper. This is the first scheme that we've finished. This is Boston Endeavour Academy in Boston. And that's just a photograph showing the completed scheme in the background there with a number of the team that helped deliver it on the ground. Sheridan making a starring role in that photograph. You could just move this on, please. Tracy, that's great. Just showing you a couple of shots of the interior. We haven't had the professional photographs taken yet, so this is just giving you a general idea. This is the hygiene suite that's attached to the new hydrotherapy pool. And this is this picture here is actually showing you a kitchen facility, and what you'll notice is that we have rise and fall desks, for example, for children, where we need to either have lower or higher facilities. And you can see, and that's not just the cooking facilities and the table closest to you, but also the kitchen facilities with a sink as well furthest away. Really an awful lot of thought has been put into the design of these facilities, and this is outstanding what we have here in Boston. If you could just move on. Again, moving on to Bourne Willoughby, what you'll see here, this is an interesting one because this is what we call modular. So it's not a traditional build. A traditional build is with bricks and mortar and you hang everything off a steel cage effectively. What this is actually, this is built in a factory and assembled on site. And if you just scroll into the next photograph, there is absolutely no difference between modular and a traditional build once you get inside. This was taken a couple of weeks ago, just before we finished and handed over. But when you're walking around the facility, it feels exactly the same as a traditional build. And this is just an example of how we've been innovative with the supply chain, working in different ways to give us the best result that's right for that project. That project, and in fact, Bourne and Spilsby, very, very tight site conditions that would have made a traditional build very difficult and expensive to deliver. If you'd like to move on, please, Tracy. We can move on with that photograph, but that's just showing a couple of guys finishing the carpet and having a look there. If we just move on to Spilsby, that'd be great, thank you. Again, this is a modular finish or a modular build again, built in a factory, assembled on site. The really interesting thing about modular is that if you look on the site, the foundations are prepared in the traditional way, but literally it arrives on the back of a HGV with a giant crane that lifts it off, drops it on site, it's all bolted together, and then it's all wired up, and that's the end product, which I think you'll agree looks fantastic. If you'd like to move on. And again, showing a classroom inside Spilsby there. Great facilities. Again, you wouldn't know that it wasn't a traditional build at the end of it, and the school and the feedback that we've had from both Boston, Spilsby and Bourne is that they're very, very happy with the facilities that we have there. If you'd like to move on, please, Tracy. Thank you. This is just showing the connecting. This is how we connect from the modular build to the existing school, just a covered walkway. And this will just be how, when we build a separate new build, that's just how we connect them to the existing builds. Would you like to move on, please, Tracy? Now, St Bernard's. So apologies, the next couple of images don't show you an awful lot, but this is what it will look like when it's finished. But at Louth, if you'd like to move on, again, we have a construction site. We've done some early enabling works here. And in fact, again, if you could just move on, Tracy, what we're doing is we've finished the car park, finished the residential block, and we're now on with building the new build there. And in fact, what you're looking at is the staff car park that has been finished. Now, this photo was taken a couple of weeks ago, but as you can see, progress is ongoing. St Christopher's. This is literally, we're still in the very early stages of design. So there are two sites to St Christopher's, just to remind you. We've got the primary site and we've got the secondary site. This is the primary school just off Tritton Road, if you know it. And what you're looking at is a bird's eye view. And what this does do is it gives you a really good view, the bottom left-hand corner, of how all the transport and all the car parking is off the highway. So you've got an in and an out. So staff car parking. The children drop-off zone is actually in a secure area, which looks like a baseball, netball court, or a muggo, as we call it, multi-use games area. So the children are all dropped off in a secure area. All the traffic is off the highway. And that's one of the things we've been able to do throughout all of these schemes, actually, is significantly improve the existing facilities. So that school, like Boston, will have a hydrotherapy pool in it as well. And we're looking to get on site next year. So in fact, we're about to sign the contract at the moment. So the back end of this year, next year, we'll be starting construction. If we can move on to the secondary site. Again, you've got a bird's eye view of the secondary site here. Again, I don't know if you know or are familiar with the site. Hopefully, we'll welcome all committee members to some of these schemes once they're finished. But this is, again, a part new build, part retaining the existing. And in fact, smack bang in the middle, the L-shaped building that you're looking at, that's going to be the new build. Again, we've been able to improve car parking and school drop-off and pick-up for that particular site there as well. And in fact, it's going to look fantastic and significantly improve that local area and the feel of that local area as well. The existing facilities are awful. There's no other way of saying it like that. Our Sdnd schools were some of in the worst condition throughout our entire estate. So what we're doing here is really a good thing. Just move on, Tracy. I'll skip through these next images. This is Spalding the Priory. Again, a new build block, very early days. Again, just giving you an image of what that will look like. Yeah, that's great. If you could just move on. Ambergate, this was a self-delivered scheme. If we'll just flick through these last couple of photos, and then I will finish off and refer to the paper. This was delivered in partnership with CIT. And similarly with Garth as well. This is just a couple of photos showing you the sensory areas that have been finished at that site. And I think that concludes all the photos that we have for you. Again, just giving you a couple of headlines on some of the other schemes. We've got Horncastle, St Lawrence, which again, very early days in the design process. So we're looking forward to seeing a design coming through there. St Francis in Lincoln, again, very early days in the design process. And then Gosperton, where we are looking to start very soon. So I'll hand back over to Eileen, who can give you an update on the workforce.
Sorry, thank you very much. So just to summarise the supporting systems around to ensure that children and young people with Sdnd receive the very best education that they possibly can in these lovely new buildings. There has been significant progress made around the special school reorganisation policy. The special school reorganisation policy is to ensure that all schools receive fair and equitable funding to be able to deliver special education provision. There's £2 million has been earmarked, which is starting to be drawn down on, and that has filled already Boston, Endeavour, Ambergate and Garth with the loose equipment that's been required from there, expenses for relocations and also for IT resources. So schools and children are starting to really see the benefit of the funding allocated to this policy. The workforce development strategy, again, very exciting. It's a planned Sdnd learning platform with all training and resources in the one place. This is currently at the procurement stage and is set for launch in spring 2022. And the platform will incorporate the high needs transformation developments such as the vSdnd toolkit, bringing everything accessibly into the one place for Sdnd professionals, but also for parents and carers as well. And along with that will also incorporate all of our existing commission training as well. So it will be a one-stop shop for Sdnd training and awareness. Our health offer, it was felt very much at the early stages of the programme. that it was absolutely right that children should be able to access a robust health offer from their special schools, reducing the need for them to be able to have to leave school to go to clinic appointments in hospitals, also to get their physio, occupational therapy and speech and language therapy in the school setting. The capital programme has enabled this because each school has a dedicated space both for visiting professionals, a medical space and also a physiotherapy space. We're starting discussions with ophthalmology about the potential for them being run from the special schools so that children don't have to leave their classrooms to go to their hospital appointments. So that's coming on board soon. It's very exciting. All of our special schools are signed up to the specialist equipment contract, which offers value for money in terms of accessing specialist equipment. So again, significant progress has been made in the health area. And then finally, with our specialist community-led panels, which have been established to ensure that children who are deemed potentially slightly harder to place, so that where a special school may say we currently can't meet need, and those children are at risk of having to be allocated a place in an independent, non-maintained special school or an out-of-county placement, which is significantly more costly. We now have a panel established to review these cases to see if we can seek solutions to ensure that that child is maintained in Lincolnshire and in a local special school. The first panel was held, and effectively 2 cases which would have resulted in a placement in independent non-maintained special school have places now in their local special school. So even though it's very, very early days with those, they're definitely providing a beneficial service. I think that's all we have to update. So Dave, Sheridan and I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. That's an excellent summary and a good news story throughout. There's a couple of things I'll want to mention, but it's, I think, priority that members should ask questions first. So who do we have with them first?
Councillor Tyrrell first.
Councillor Tyrrell, over to you.
Thank you very much. This question is, well, it's comment as well as questions to Dave. The modules you built, I noticed that it's brickwork underneath. Is it all module and then a brickwork around the outside on the bottom half, or is it building, normal building at the bottom and a module at the top? That was one. Oh, sorry, mate. The other things I was going to say, I'm absolutely impressed with it, to be honest. The movement on it was pretty rapid. I mean, it looks tremendous, and I love the actual tables and all that. I noticed in the report it said about the 500% of build costs or containers, really. This might explain something to me, because I've just ordered a container full of teddy bears up through somebody else, and they've refused to do it now. So now I know why. So, but what I was going to say is, are these modules made in this country or are they made abroad? They are in this country. Oh, that's a bonus then. And the last thing, what was it? Oh, I noticed on one of the photos it showed some housing, and I didn't know. Are you housing any of these children who can't? Or is it, or are they all? Is some housing done? Is there some people living on site, basically? Children I'm on about. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tyrrell. Just in terms of the brickwork and the modular, so how it happens is literally the whole unit is delivered on site. And then some vary. Some they literally do get brickies, putting some bricks on the outside just to clad it. Some actually do come with cladding that actually looks like brickwork. So it's a mixture of both. Those two, Spilsby and Bourne, were actually real brick, so to speak, on the outside. But it's very straightforward. It's not structural. It is literally just, you know, making it look pretty. And I don't believe we're housing any children on site. I'll just leave Eileen to answer that one.
No, I'll just answer that one. So you'll have noticed the residential provision at the St Bernard's site. That's for short breaks provision. So as part of Sheridan's service, short breaks respite is provided to families. So not housing as such, but for overnight stays.
And who's the next questioner?
Councillor Matthews.
Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, and congratulations. They look fantastic, and clearly a seismic change in the quality of our offer. You said conditions were awful on a number of occasions. We don't run a lot of these buildings, do we? they're with trusts. What I'm concerned about is I won't be a councillor in 20 years' time, but in 20 years' time, will the councillors sitting in this chamber be asked to put additional multi-million pounds in because the conditions were awful? And my question is, who's responsible for maintaining these, both in terms of the direction of the quality of special educational provision, but also in the quality of capital refurbishment over the next 20 years? Is it the trust or is it the county council? And how do we, if it's the trust, how do we ensure that they don't allow dereliction to creep in the way that it clearly has, because conditions were awful?
Thanks, Councillor Matthews. I'll just come back on the condition of the building bit, and I'll let Eileen answer the part. So we've got a mixture. We've got maintained and we've got academy trust schools. So maintained, and obviously the county council has statutory duty to maintain schools. Where it's with an academy trust, they take sole responsibility for the condition of that school. So Boston Endeavour, for example, is handed over to CIT, the academy trust there, on a long lease, and effectively they have to maintain and ensure the quality of that school. I can give you some assurance with all the new build facilities that we're putting in. They have a 60-year lifespan, and with certainly the next 10, 15, 20 years, they shouldn't require much intervention at all. So the estate that we're providing is positioning those academy trusts certainly on a very good footing, but it is their responsibility to maintain them beyond that.
I think it's also worth noting that many of these buildings were maintained schools, and recently, some of them more recently than others, academised. So it's less about deterioration of the building and neglect by the trust, and more about the fact that these buildings were built in the 1960s. They have very narrow corridors. They didn't have a huge amount of well-designed outside space. So it's more about the fact that our thinking has changed in terms of what children and young people with Sdnd need, rather than that the trusts have let them go to wreck and ruin.
Councillor Matthews just wants to come back.
Oh, Councillor Matthews.
Yeah, and I think that is the nub of my question about special educational needs policy. So we've got hydrotherapy pools, we've got rise and lower desks, we've got sensory areas. They were not in vogue 20 years ago. They've become in vogue now. In 20 years' time, there will be digital awareness rooms that are amazing. What are we doing to build in the capital improvement, because they will require capital improvement as the policy needs shift? So I absolutely take what you've said, Dave, about the repairs of them, but it's not so much repairs as having outdated strategies in capital build to support changing practice in special educational needs environment. What provision is built in for that? That's my question.
I think, Heather, you wish to come in at this point?
That would be great, thanks. So, sorry, I've got my back to you, Councillor Matthews, I apologise. So, okay, so one of the things that really needs to be considered nationally is the funding of Sdnd provision. So a lot of the funding that the councils used has come through funding that comes for schools, but what we have a responsibility for having enough places for children, and demand for special school places has outstripped the provision that we've got. And currently we have a really clear system through central government of how we fund the expansion of mainstream schools, but not specialist provision. And that would include how we add in facilities, and Councillor Matthews is absolutely right. We can't even imagine what will be available in 20 years to make these young people's lives even better and allow them to have even more independence, and we want our children to benefit from that. So we are seeing some movement from central government about how we fund this. When we expand mainstream schools, it doesn't matter whether they're an academy or a mainstream school, that funding comes through us to deliver provision for young people, and then we work with academies to deliver it, and then the maintenance crosses over. We don't have the same systems in place for children with Sdnd. We are seeing movement on that, and that's something that we continue to work with central government about. So we've been really lucky to be able to do this project. But it's absolutely right. We will need other things in the future, and we need a reliable central government way for that to come through. There's currently an Sdnd review happening, and that review is looking at how local government is able to provide enough places of the right quality for their children with Sdnd.
Thanks, Heather, and I'm sure you'll be involved, no doubt, in the input to the review. I'm sure that'll happen. Thank you very much. I think Councillor Taylor, you wish to ask a question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you noted, certainly some good news reported here this morning, but a question regarding security and safety. Do these new builds include CCTV or other safety measures? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Taylor. I can confirm, yeah, that they do. So the sites themselves, all new fencing has been put in, very robust Harris type fencing, which you'll see, which is a good between security and aesthetically looking good. So it's very robust, and all the schools have CCTV, so you can see inside and outside. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Carter next.
Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, fabulous project, and I think the team's done a really good job to keep things moving as much as they have, so well done on that. Just a couple of small questions. On page 14, it references a free school application that unfortunately was unsuccessful. That, I'm guessing, obviously was before my time, so just a little bit more on why that was unsuccessful and if we've got kind of anything more that we can go at with that. On page 17, where we've got the progress by scheme, brilliant to read. Absolutely, some superb progress there. But actually, how many of those pupils are now changed schools and at their nearest school now? So how many has this truly impacted and got them to a school nearer to home? And finally, on page 22, it mentions the health offer, and it's just to be clear in my mind that the St Francis School is the designated profound and multiple learning centre at the minute. Is that still going to be the designated profound and multiple learning centre, even though the other schools will have a better medical offer? Will that still be the main centre for that? And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. So I think in terms of the free school, unfortunately, we were successful. Out of all of the local authority, I think there were around 40 to 50 chosen, and we weren't successful. We did receive some feedback from the Department for Education in terms of why. One, we believe, was in relation to the fact that we were investing quite significantly in our schools already. There was some discussion around all needs provision as well, and maybe a lack of clarity for the DFE on all needs provision, as many of the successful ones were around resource provisions for autism. So they did provide us with some feedback. Councillor Bradwell did at the time address that with the DFE. In terms of how many have moved schools, unfortunately I can't give you the exact figure. However, that is something I can go away and speak to Boston Endeavour about. However, we have had some very positive feedback from parents who are now able to access the school closer to home. As you can imagine, it's a little like a military operation if you're only opening one school, you can't then all of a sudden move everybody from the Boston area into that school. So it will be a gradual process over the 5 years.
And Eileen, we probably just need to say that when this came through this committee, one of the things that was agreed was that no one would be made to move. So for some young people, they've got maybe 2 years of a 10-year school career left, and their parents, despite the distance, want them to stay settled. So the committee asked that to be one of the factors within doing the project, is that nobody would be made to move.
And then finally, in terms of St Francis will be all needs in the same way as all of the special schools will be. So we won't have a designated profound and multiple and physical disability. And that's one of the pieces of work that we're doing with our health work stream to ensure that our most complex children and those with long-term ventilated can attend a nearer school, so that the risk is being removed in terms of that long journey to St Francis from other parts of the county. So the provision will be equitable across the county.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Councillor Whittington.
Councillor Whittington.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And first of all, a sort of big congratulations, I think, to everybody who's been involved in this project, because I think it's a really outstanding piece of work and shows our commitment to SEND needs in the county. Response to my question, and it's probably no surprise I'm going to ask a question around the finance in the numbers. Obviously, I see that obviously the budget's increased now to 86.8 million, and of that 71 million is coming from a capital grant from the government with the remaining 15.6 million from LCC to cover the funding gap. And I think Dave gave a really good part of his presentation around all the kind of supply chain issues which are currently going on at the moment. And obviously, you know, I don't think that this comes as news to anybody, because you have to turn on the news, either read the newspaper or watch the news to know that these kind of issues are really there and prepared at the moment. So, and also aware of the fact that when the budgets were originally set, there were some contingency elements built in to that. So my question really is, were those contingencies, will all these sort of potential extra costs as a result of all these supply chain issues, are the contingencies in the budgets sufficient to cover those, or potentially will there be another increase in cost from the 86.8 million that we've currently got? And I'm assuming that if the amount paid by the capital grant is fixed, then potentially the remaining financial risks would sit with LCC. So, or would there be the ability to go back to get the amount of the capital grant increase? So just a bit of clarity around that, I think, Mr. Chairman, is quite useful. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
I don't want to put officers on the spot, really. What I would say to you is you're quite right. We never envisaged COVID, and we never envisaged prices going up, which I think even Boris and the government wouldn't have been able to envisage what has happened and how goods have been in short supply. And actually, what we've done in that time is pretty amazing. You know, our contractors, because I know Dave very early on was saying to me, Tricia, I don't think we're not going to keep to the timeline, and we clearly have. Now, we have been able to source funding because we got more money into the Sdnd budget, which we've allocated to this. And yes, there could be, I don't know what's going to happen. What I can say to the committee and to Mark is we meet once a month. Poor Dave comes along and every month he gets the same questions, and are you rigorously watching? And actually, I think things have actually sought to level out. Now, you know, the increases that we saw at the beginning were huge, and that's when we had to readdress the budget and go to the leader and, you know, look at how we could fund it. But actually, I think at the moment things aren't probably shooting up as much. But as I say, we are where we are. We are trying to manage within our budget, and you know, some of our academies have gone off and got funding direct from government because they can do that. The Grantham scheme has received funding from government to go towards that scheme. So we are trying everything we can, but I can't stand here in front of this committee today and say we won't be spending any more money, because, you know, I just don't know what's happening. But what I can say is when, you know, we have an issue, we have looked at different ways of doing the scheme. So, you know, it is just where we are, but hopefully we will come through on that figure.
Mr. Chairman, can I just add on as well?
Indeed.
The business case for this is really strong. So in terms of the outcomes we get and the cost savings from placing children in Lincolnshire and not in out-of-county private specialist schools is really significant. They're doing really well with us. So whilst I completely agree with everything Councillor Bradwell said, you know, even if we see cost pressures, the business case for what we will save on our revenue budget and the high needs budget is really stark. So there's almost we can't afford not to do this. We need to really think about it.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Councillor Mrs. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, I think this is an absolutely fantastic capital programme, and obviously we've always had issues, haven't we, where special needs children with disabilities have not been able to get into special schools. And I just wondered, I mean, maybe this is a completely unrealistic question. When the whole capital programme is finished, have you got any idea what the final capacity is for how many children we can actually, you know, we have places for it in all these special schools in Lincoln, and whether there's spare capacity and whether there's been future proofing, just to give me an idea so that, you know, we know what capacity we've actually built. Thanks.
So in terms of the figures for additional capacity, we're creating an additional 527 places with this. The figure, the 527 figure, has been based on 5-year projections with a 10% flex in. So we are comfortable with our potential capacity for our special schools. I think it's definitely worth noting as well, because at present a lot of our special schools do take additional children, and they're in classrooms, and there's probably potentially more children than would be comfortable for that, for the right level of space. So not only will this create an additional 527, but it will ensure that children are educated in classrooms of the right sizes with the right facilities and the right provision. But yeah, just to provide you reassurance, the projection figures have been based on.
So how many children actually go to a special school? So you said you've created 527 more. So what's the total, like the global figure for special school children, just to get an idea? I don't, if you can't answer it now, it doesn't matter.
No,
I was just interested.
We've got just over 2,000. I can't tell you the exact number. We've got just over 2,000 in at the moment. So we'll be around 2,500. But I think it's really important that we also just mention about some of the transformation work that we've been doing, which I presented in September. So, you know, one of the things that we recognise is that there are young people that are in special school for a period of time, but actually they can often be ready to go back to mainstream school as well. So part of this programme, you know, they link together. The two areas of transformation and the capital programme are interlinked, because we also need to ensure that those young people that are ready to go back to mainstream school can be supported to do that. So we've heard it called a revolving door quite a bit, whether you like that analogy or not. But that revolving door, if we're getting young people back out as well, then we should be in a position where we've got capacity, and we should be able to manage that. You know, with the projections that we did based on our history, and then also looking at the work that we're doing to try and keep young people in mainstream school and support them if we can. The workforce development that Eileen talked about is a really important element of that, ensuring that mainstream settings have got the skills to meet the needs of some of our young people with more complex needs. But then also this revolving door approach, so that when young people are ready to come out, then we've got that. So the capital programme isn't in isolation, it's also tied into the transformation work as well.
No, thanks. We talked about that before, so thanks very much for the clarification.
Thank you. I believe Councillor Tyrrell, you wish to ask a supplementary question.
Yeah, it's only because I missed it off my list, but it's building again. Sorry about this, but what it was is when we was talking about the modules, you must have placed that order before all this kicked off. So there's where you probably saved a fair bit of money, and because you've already done it once, will you continue doing modules? And because of being built in England or Britain, you'll get the price. Because I know when I spoke to you last time and we said, is this a fixed price and it's not going to go up? You said, yes, it's going to be fixed. Is that the reasoning behind it? And I know you've answered a lot of the questions with the actual price increases on already. So I'll forget about all the rest of it. I just, that one piece really. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Tyrrell. So modular is, we choose it for, well, firstly, I'll remind, we assess each project based on its merits. Every project is unique. It has unique site conditions, its own set of unique challenges. And so therefore we work collaboratively with the supply chain to make sure we get the right solution for that site in terms of construction. In terms of Bourne and Spilsby, they were really difficult sites to work with, very constrained, which meant that delivering that via traditional methods would probably have been more expensive. So we came forward with a modular solution. Now, to answer your question, what we do moving forward is we determine the right solution for the site, because sometimes modular can be more expensive than a traditional build. So it's not always relevant to do a modular build. So to answer your question, we put the right solution for the site. But in terms of modular, yes, it is built in factories. Of course, the challenge that you have there at the moment is energy prices. So whilst they may not be subject to some of the supply chain volatility that we're experiencing perhaps with HGV drivers and all the rest of it, the challenge that they have at the moment is keeping the lights on. So we are seeing, challenges across the board.
Thank you very much. Do we have any further questions?
No one further indicating, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Clearly, we've had a very exciting report. I think it's very reassuring that despite the times in which we find ourselves, that the system is working and we're delivering, which I think is so important. And I'd like to congratulate all the officers and staff involved in this project, because it must be very challenging in view of the situation where COVID hit us 18 months ago. So I think that's to be commended. The actions required of this committee, we're requested to review and comment on the content of this report and the progress made in year 3. I think we can fairly say we've done that. And the second requirement of us is to receive an update on year 4 of the implementation in October 2022, which seems an awful long time away, but no doubt it will come around very quickly. I propose that the committee has reviewed the content of the report and is satisfied with the progress made in year 3 of implementation, and that we receive an update on the year 4 of implementation in October 2022. And if I could just add a couple of more comments, actually, which I said I would do. Obviously, when it's appropriate, we'll be advised when that is, it would be good to visit some of these sites, but obviously I appreciate it's got to be the appropriate time to do that. I'm sure members would wish to visit some of these sites. There's a lot of nodding heads, so I think we can take that one as a given. One thing I'd be interested to know about is how progress goes on with the Sdnd learning platform. Whether we could have an update on that before October next year, perhaps, if that's appropriate again. And I was very reassured to hear reports about reduction in out-of-county services. We all know in any service that the council provides, if you have to go out of county, it is very, very expensive. So the savings there, I think, are very much to be welcomed. So I would now ask if you would indicate by raising your hands if you support those two actions. All agreed, is it? Great. Thank you very much. We'll now have a 10-minute comfort break and we'll resume at 5 to 11. I know some members have got IT issues to deal with as well, so that's why we've built the break in for that reason as well as the usual reason. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Chairman.
And good morning again and welcome back to the second half of this morning's meeting. We're now on to item 6 on the agenda, which is corporate parenting responsibilities. And this item seeks to outline what the Council's corporate parenting responsibilities are and how good corporate parenting can greatly improve the lives and outcomes for our young people. And I'd like to welcome Andy Morris, Corporate Parenting Manager, who is attending today in the Council Chamber to present this report and provide us with a presentation. So it's over to you, Andy. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. We got the presentation, Tracy. This is where we see if the technology works. It works. Excellent. So good morning, everybody. I'm Andy Morris. I'm the Corporate Parenting Manager for the Council. My role is to focus on the needs of our looked after children, our care leavers, those children that are in the care of the local authority. And that just over there is a little overview. That's our looked after children and care leavers strategy 2018-2021 that is currently being reviewed and refreshed. And I'll bring that here when that strategy has been refreshed. And what I'll also promise to do is have working groups with any elected members that wish to be part of the development of that strategy, as and when we've got the bare bones of that together ready for next year. So I'll make sure that the members are around that development as well. Next slide, please. So really the aims and objectives of this presentation, my covering paper, is to assist you in understanding the role, your role, and in helping you meet the corporate parenting responsibilities and how you deliver those responsibilities to our young people. It's to help everyone gain an understanding of the law and the policy and how that relates to corporate parenting, because it is named in statute, and to raise awareness of the needs and the complexities of our children, of those that are looked after and those that are leaving our care. And really kind of what I really want to try and do here is bring to life your responsibilities and bring to life the needs and complexities of the young people that we in Children's Services look after and support when they're leaving care, and you as elected members, their parent named in law. So next. Thank you. So, just to give you an overview, the Children's Social Work Act 2017 says that when a child or young person comes into our care, and I've got a lovely drill going in the background, that's really helping, that they come into the local authority, if they're under the age of 25 and they're looked after by the authority for at least 13 weeks after their 14th birthday, the authority becomes their corporate parent. And what that means is that whether it's under Section 20 of the Children's Act or Section 31, which is a full care order, we have a parenting responsibility to children that are in our care. Whether we share that responsibility with their parents at the same time or we are solely removed from their family, the elected members, the senior officers and Heather are the corporate parents of these children. And really, I just want to outline there are 7 legal principles that serve to define the corporate parenting role, and they're defined in the Act as: we have to act in the best interest and promote health and well-being. Now, that's a very nice line from central government, but what we really need to be doing is really working out as elected members and senior officers, what does that mean? How do we do that? How do we deliver that? How do we encourage an expression of young people's views and their wishes and feelings? So we really need to think through as senior officers, social workers, early help workers, elected members, how do we make sure that our young people that are in our care, that we as a local authority with delegated responsibility have removed them from their family? How do we discharge our duty? How do we do that? So, and how do we enable them to access the best use of our services provided by the local authority and its partners? You know, how do we make sure that as the county council, how do we make sure they get best access to services provided by district councils, health authorities, schools, and how do we ensure that we force that and we raise that profile with all of our partners? We've got to promote high aspiration and the need to secure best outcomes. I think we're a really aspirational county council. We're an outstanding children's services department. And I know that we aim at all times to secure the very best outcomes for our young people. But how do you do that as elected members? That's a pretty difficult question. I will be delivering some corporate parenting training at the elected members development groups on the 5th of November, and I was just speaking to Councillor Whittington about that. So I'd welcome you to come, and we'll kind of delve a little deeper into corporate parenting and how to best deliver your duties. And then seek to ensure they are safe and have stability in their home lives, relationships, education and work, and then prepare them for adulthood and independent living. Again, how do you as county councillors, how do you prepare our young people for adulthood and independent living? How do you help the senior officers design and develop services and make sure that any scrutiny panel, any influence you have with the community, how do you have our young people at the forefront of your thinking and your mind? Next one, please, Trace. So, what does it mean? Every corporate parent has a responsibility to make sure the council is meeting its duty, support the corporate parenting principles and to act in the best interest of our looked after children and care leavers. And one of the measures I always use is when I don't have any children of my own, but I do happen to have, along with Heather, 1,000 children in our care and those leaving care. So I do consider myself to be a parent. But would it be good enough for my own children when I'm making a placement decision, when a young person's placement breaks down, when a young person has difficulty at school, when a young person comes into contact with the criminal justice system? Would it be good enough for my own child? Because some of the young people we look after are very challenging, very difficult, and they may do things we don't like. They may do things we don't want them to do, and they may do things that are very unpalatable for our local community. But as a parent, how do we discharge our duty, and how do we determine what our decision is going to be, and what is our thinking going to be, as if that was our own child? Because if our own child got into trouble with the criminal justice system, broke somebody's window, disturbed the neighbours, we would try and advocate for our young person, our own child, whilst trying to appease the local community where we lived. And that's a real difficult one for us as senior officers and councillors to represent whole communities. How do we balance that? How do we do that? And that's the kind of thinking I'm trying to stimulate with this presentation today. Next one, please, Tracy. So our young people and children in care. As of 15th of October, I think these figures are slightly skewed because I'm sorry, I wrote them the other week and I just put 15th of October. So I think we're slightly lower, aren't we? Yeah, we're a little bit lower than 697. So we've got 697 or there and thereabouts, aged between 0 to 17 years old, that are in our care that you have a corporate parenting responsibility to, along with myself, Heather, Joe, Carolyn, Martin, everybody else in the room. We had 316 female and 381 male. That kind of pretty representative across the country, slightly higher numbers of males in care than females. And 144 are aged over the age of 16. So you can see there's quite a number of young people aged over the age of 16. And at the age of 16, young people start that journey towards leaving care. 71% were placed in foster care and 29% placed in other provisions. And I think that's a real positive story that we've got 71% of our young people placed in foster placements. That's within a family environment, which we know is the best environment for young people to be placed in. If you're going to get the best outcomes for young people, fostering and residential, local authority residential, some of the best placements we can provide for young people. That's a really good news story for our local authority. And I just really wanted to say that we really need to bear in mind that these young people come into our care not through any choice of their own. These young people come into care through the behaviours of their parents and their family and the people around them. And they come into care because they've experienced abuse and neglect, and in some cases, really significant physical and or emotional harm. So just bear that in mind when we kind of think about how some of these young people's life experiences bear out later on in their lives. Next one, please, Tracy. Now, I'm not going to play this story because if I did, I'll probably cry, because I do every time. But when the presentation is circulated by Tracy after this meeting, that's a web link and it will take you to a YouTube channel about one of our young people called Ellie, who came into care, and she tells her story about how she came into care. And I used to meet Ellie for a coffee in the canteen here sometimes. And she came into care after her mother died. And her dad was an alcoholic and he used to assault her. And she was one of our apprentices. So while she was an apprentice here, as a corporate parenting manager and lead responsibility for care leavers apprenticeships, I used to meet for a coffee and a bit of lunch every now and again. She said to me one day, "I'm bored, I want your job." I said, "Well, if you want my job, A, you need to be mad." I said, and B, I said, you need a degree. So Ellie left her apprenticeship. And she left early, and I thought, what are you doing? And she's now studying social work at university, and she's gone to university. Ellie made her own decision. That's what she wanted to do. And as a corporate parent, we're supporting her to go to university. That's the best interest. That's the best outcome for our young people. And when we're looking at the statistics, we say there's lies, damn lies, and statistics, and you've got to dig under the statistic and find out what is the true lived experience of our young people. So when I talk to you later, Ellie, one of our children that came into care, is a care leaver, and she's now at university studying to be a social worker because she wants my job later on in her life. And probably in 20 years' time when she's ready for it, she's welcome to it by then, that's fine. So next slide, please. Okay. So I just really wanted to kind of run over our approach. So how do we show our children in care that we have our aspirations for them? So every young person in our care has an individual care plan. Every child and young person in our care has a suitable placement. By law, anybody under the age of 18 who is in our care, I must make sure they have a suitable placement accommodation. That we do not have young people in our care homeless. Every young person is in a suitable, safe, caring placement, and we must provide that. We have robust oversight of our independent reviewing officers of every child, led by Carolyn's team. Every young person has an IRO. You might have heard that acronym before. Independent reviewing officer who oversees their looked after child in care plan, their LAC review, as we call it. And then at the age of 16 through to the age of 18, they overview their pathway plan and their transition towards adulthood. And they support them, they advocate for them, they argue for them, and they represent those young people's views. And we as a local authority provide that person to them. The virtual school provides excellent support and oversight in education. Kieran Barnes and Sarah Lane, I'm sure this panel will have presentations with Kieran and Sarah in the future to talk to you about what the virtual school does and how the virtual school supports our young people in education to maintain their education and get excellent educational outcomes. So they promote health and wellbeing with our health colleagues. We have really good connections with our health services and our health partners to ensure every young person has a health review, dental checks, and every young person is in a good physical and emotional place. Timely health assessments and reviews, pathway planning for our care leavers, and we also have a mental health support worker now embedded within our leaving care service. So whilst I'm talking through these wonderful things that we provide for our young people, I think it comes back to how do we as a council, parent, we're providing services, but how do we genuinely create a good, warm, cosy, comfortable family environment as a big galumphing county council that we are? We're a big organisation, but how does every aspect, how does every arm of the council provide that warm, caring, nurturing, parental approach to our young people? That's a difficult question, because how does Highways deliver caring support to children? I couldn't tell you right now, but we need to find a way, because there's something Highways could do differently. Just to say, that's just throwing it out there. How do we make sure every part of the council does that? I'm also really proud to say we have a strong housing pathway with many options for our young people. And I'll talk a little bit later about our care leavers in suitable accommodation. And we also have an excellent apprenticeship offer. And we also have a focus on improving employment, education and training outcomes. Post-pandemic, EAT has become a real focus of ours. And we've employed some aspiration workers within the leaving care service to focus on improving our education, employment and training outcomes for young people. Next one, please, Trace. So the council also has the legal duty to ensure that we are in a position to provide suitable placements. The county has a duty to ensure as far as reasonably possible, sufficient accommodation is available locally to meet the needs of looked after children and care leavers. I'm sure you would have heard about our residential expansion programme. You'll have presentations and updates on our fostering sufficiency strategy, the number of placements available to young people, the number of people placed in and out of county. And as you know, we're still growing an excellent, and we have, in my view, one of the best in-house fostering offers in the country, a really strong, effective, supportive fostering offer. And that's what keeps our young people close to home, close to their family networks, even though we've removed them from their family. Our young people still want to know their families. So how do we do that? How do we maintain that close connection whilst they're in foster care? And councils should regularly review the position and report on how they need to meet the sufficiency strategy, duty. The fostering sufficiency strategy will be brought to children and young people scrutiny, and you'll be able to oversee and understand how we're delivering that and making sure that every young person has a suitable placement. The sufficiency strategy, say that after 4 points, is a valuable source of information for our members in relation to their role as corporate parents. You know, it gives you an idea, an overview of you as the strategic owners of the county council. How are we delivering that, and is there anything we need to do differently? We provide foster care in in-house placements and also in independent providers. We've got residential placements, supported lodgings. Some of our care leavers have private rents. They have their own accommodation. And we provide a semi-independent supported and a supported living offer for young people over the age of 16 to 18. I'm sure you would have seen some of that on the news about unregulated placements for young people, but actually semi-independent living for 16 to 18-year-olds in some cases is exactly what those young people want. And it's what they need, and they thrive in a transitional placement at the age of 16 and 17, ready for independence at 18. Thanks, Tracy. So, just to introduce you to who are our care leavers. The Leaving Care Service is in Lincolnshire is delivered by Bernardo's Leaving Care Service, and we've been commissioning Bernardo's for a number of years now, and they've got the current contract to deliver that service, and I oversee that service with Kerry Mitchell and Lisa Adams. The Leaving Care Service is offered to anybody who's eligible for that service from the age of 16. So at the age of 16, young people who are in care get to know their leaving care worker and their social worker, and they work alongside each other up to the age of 18 to support young people to get ready for adulthood. And then at the age of 18, the social worker disappears because, of course, 18, young people are adults and they can start to make their own decisions and make more kind of informed personal choices in life about the way they want to go and how they want their life to be. I don't think anybody in this room was ready for the big outside world at the age of 18, but young people were at one point expected to leave care at the age of 18. But the Leaving Care Service is that transitional service that supports young people from their 18th birthday all the way up to the age of 21 and then through to the age of 25. So it's just to give you a quick overview. At the age of 16 to 21, young people have a leaving care worker, dedicated mental health support workers in Lincolnshire Leaving Care. I support them with accommodation, includes some possible funding. Over the age of 18, I don't have a legal duty to provide accommodation anymore, but over the age of 18, we have a legal duty to ensure young people can secure accommodation. And that's the difference. That's when the legislation starts to change. But we still have a corporate parenting responsibility from the age of 18 through to the age of 25. So although we don't have to provide bricks and mortar, how do we provide services and how do we work with our partners? How do we work with our district councils? How do we work with housing authorities? How do we break some of those problems down and build really strong connections with our strategic partners to make sure that we have access to really good accommodation offers for our 18 to 21-year-olds? That's a question I would kind of pose as elected members. How can you use your influence to improve and help us develop those services even more as good corporate parents? We provide excellent apprenticeships, supporting accessing and paying for education. We pay university fees and accommodation fees when young people come back from university, so young people don't ever have to stay in halls of residence on their own during Christmas holidays or Easter. They could think of nothing worse. So we pay for young people to come back and stay close to family and friends, whoever it might be in those school holidays, to make sure they're not left isolated during school holidays at university. We help with living costs, sometimes rents and debts. I no doubt any elected member who's got children at the age of 18, of course, you stop supporting your kids financially. No, I don't think anybody did. Everyone comes back, bank of mum and dad still chuck you a tenner, chuck you 20 quid. Oh, I need some bus fare, I need some bus fare to get to work. That's the kind of thing, how do we do that as a county council? How do we deliver that corporate parenting responsibility? And how do we make sure young people know that we're here there to support them? And over the age of 21, any care leaver could come back for support. We call it IAG, Information, Advice and Guidance, from the age of 21 up to the age of 25. And then at the age of 25, the Leaving Care Service really does start to leave young people to find their own way in the world. But we have to do that at some point. Although I would say that I do know care leavers come back for a coffee every now and again, some of the age of 26, 27, but we never shut the door. We still put the kettle on and sit down with our care leavers and have a coffee. So just to give you a little idea, nationally, fewer than 1% of young people in the UK come into care. So actually, just bearing this in mind in context, very, very, very small numbers of children across the country come into care. But over 60% of that 1% have become looked after due to abuse and neglect. And we know that that very, very small number of our population have poorer educational health and outcomes than their peers. 6% of that 1% of the children in care population have involvement in the criminal justice system. This isn't locally, this is nationally. So we think about that, a very, very, very small number of children come into care, but then 6% of that tiny number are involved in the criminal justice system. Nationally, children in care homes are 15 times more likely to be criminalised. I can tell you that's not the case in Lincolnshire. We have an excellent protocol with the police and with our children's homes around not criminalising children in care. But what happens is children smash a plate and the care home used to call the police for criminal damage. I don't know if that's very good corporate parenting, but I wouldn't say that it is. We don't do that in Lincolnshire. An excellent protocol on our criminalisation of children in care. I can't remember the last time that ever happened in Lincolnshire where the police were called to a child for a criminal matter in a children's home, because we deal with it in a different way as any parent would in their own home. Sadly, 50% of the youth custody cohort across the UK have care experienced, and the prison system is the largest provider of accommodation to care experienced people in the UK. Very sad statistics, and 4 times more likely to have a mental health diagnosis. And I know that Councillor Kendrick might have a view on that, is that to actually have a diagnosis under the age of 18 is quite significant. So the fact that you're 4 times more likely to have a diagnosis when you're in care is actually quite a significant thing. And they're vastly overrepresented in homelessness statistics. So what I would say is the impact of trauma in childhood can never be underestimated, because that's what some of our young people across the country experience. However, locally, we have 404 people over to leaving care service. We only have 5 of those in custody. I have 18 young people in university, which is absolutely fantastic. And we have 98% in suitable accommodation, and custody is not classed as suitable accommodation. So you can see we only have a couple of young people that aren't suitably accommodated. And sadly, that is by choice. They're choosing to live on a friend's sofa, and we don't class that as suitable accommodation. We want our young people to have their own place to live. But that is a choice. They're over the age of 18. They can make that choice, but we still record it as unsuitable. We have 50% in education, employment and training, and it's settled about there. And we're hoping to climb that this year to get young people back into education, employment and training. And 98% of young people engage in our leaving care service. It's a voluntary service. Over the age of 18, young people can make whatever choices they like about them in their lives. Some of them I wouldn't say are wise choices, but they have capacity, they can make those choices. But 98% choose to work with us. And they choose to work with us and stay in touch with their leaving care service for a reason. It's because it's a really good service, and we support young people and we care for them. We make sure they've got what they need in adulthood. I've got 13 in apprenticeships. And what I would say is just most of our young people live really fulfilled and happy family lives. It just takes a little bit longer. So finally, it's really just to kind of leave you with the thought, and maybe to bring to the training on the 5th of November, if you'd like to come, is how can the rest of the council help meet the needs of our young people? Not just children's scrutiny, how do the whole council do it? How can we put children in the centre of our thinking? You know, when we're commissioning an organisation to build a big road, how do we bring our children into a thought? What can we do with those kinds of activities around the council to really make our children the centre of our thinking? How can members maintain the momentum? Because we do have some real momentum, and I would say some excellent relationships with district councils now. I know Councillor Whittington's been sat around children, young people scrutiny and corporate parenting for a while, but we have seen the relationship with district councils grow over the last 4 or 5 years, some really good connection. So but we still need to nurture support the district councils. Just so you know, I still haven't got free access for care leavers, for leisure passes across district councils, still falling on ears that do not wish to hear me. I don't know, I can't get in there. If anyone's able to help me get free access for leisure facilities to help boost physical and emotional well-being, I'm happy to have a conversation. We support keep young people a priority group across the partners and in partnership meetings. We meet with the police, housing authorities, mental health services all the time. How can we put our young people at the centre of our thinking, and how do we make sure that those other organisations that have a duty to young people, how do we make sure they think about themselves as a parent as well? Use your influence with partners to promote the needs of young people and encourage partners to help recognise and meet their needs. And think about young people in every decision, every action you take as a member, and probably support corporate parenting leads in every scrutiny group. It's something that I'm going to talk about with the corporate parenting strategies. How do we develop that to make sure that there's that person in every group that thinks about young people and thinks about the needs of young people when we're making our decisions as senior officers and county councillors. And really, I will leave that there. It was a little bit of a whistle-stop tour of corporate parenting, but I hope you get the sense of passion and urgency and the need to meet the needs of our young people, and make sure that we as senior people are able to discharge our duty with you, hand in hand, to make sure the young people get the very best outcomes they can. So I'll leave you to ask any questions or thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy, for that comprehensive report. Councillor Gray, do we have any questions indicated?
Councillor Tyrrell first.
Councillor Tyrrell.
I think I probably shot off too early with that questioning, but I will, being as there's no cameras showing everybody else the world, but I will share something with you, with Ellie. My mother died when I was 25, and I ended up in home when I was 4 with my brother. And in the 60s, it was a lot different to it is today.
Councillor Tyrrell, can I just remind you, we are being recorded, even though we're not on video.
But we're not to public, are we? Are we? Oh, sorry about that.
It will go out on the website. Yeah.
Well, I was just, well, we'll drop it from there then. I was just going to share something, but I won't. All right, but thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Heather, did you want to come in?
I was just going to say, Chairman, obviously there's a personal story there, and I'm sure Andy and I would love to hear about it, because I think it's those reflections and that passion that we're really keen to have, obviously not in a public forum, but we'll commit to hearing that story. Thank you very much.
That's a great idea. Thanks very much for that. Thank you. Questions?
Councillor Whittington next.
Councillor Whittington.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chairman, and thanks, Andy, for a very passionate presentation as usual. I think one of the reasons why, as soon as I became a councillor, got involved, took a real interest in corporate parenting and children's matters was I'm trying to remember the years. 18 years ago, we took on a 7-year-old boy from LCC who came from quite a large sibling group. They'd been, I won't go into too many details, but they've been subject to an awful lot of physical and emotional abuse. And he was with us for a year. We were kind of fostering with a view to adopt, and subsequently adopted him. He's now 25. Actually did get some really useful guidance from the Bernardo's Leaving Care service several years ago, which really helped him through. And of course, even at 25 now, he still comes to mum and dad for help and advice and stuff like that. And in many respects, I think Andy mentioned that, you know, especially with our care leavers, yeah, I mean, legally at 18, they're adults. But with any of us here who've got children who are now in their 20s and 30s, we probably still give them help and advice, don't we? You know, because they're part of our families. And in many respects, I think it's really important that we do have the Leaving Care service up to the age of 25. And I think one of the points Andy made was in his presentation was that you can never underestimate the emotional damage that's done to children when they're very young and they suffer abuse or neglect. It can have a real impact upon their lives, because certainly when I was doing with my wife, we were doing the training that the county put on. It really emphasised to us the importance of forming those bonds with children in the early years of their lives. And of course, children who have that sort of strong emotional, develop those strong emotional bonds with their families, sort of, you know, saying that nobody's going to develop mental health issues later on. But quite often with a lot of these young children, they've been abused, they've been neglected. They've never been able to form those key emotional bonds with their parents in their early years. And there is something called, we got a lot of literature around called attachment disorder, which I know it's that sort of, it's the way children bond when they're really young to parents. And quite often those key building blocks of life just aren't there for children who sadly go into care, and it can manifest itself with all kinds of issues and problems later on in life. So that's the reason why I've always been a firm advocate for our looked after children, and really got involved with the corporate parenting panel. I just would like to emphasise to all members, you know, the importance of this, all 70 of us, you know, as Andy said, legally, we are their parents, you know, and I think every decision we take, I think it's really, and I think that key test, again, that Andy used, would this be good enough for our children or for our grandchildren? And I think if we always have that thought at the back of our minds whenever we make any decisions around corporate parenting decisions, I think that's a great test to actually use. And finally, I would just really encourage all members. I'm on the council development group, and I really pushed the corporate parenting training was one of the first things that came before, on the work programme. We've got the corporate parenting training on the 5th of November. I really encourage every councillor to attend that. And I'm certainly pushing for corporate parenting training to be included as part of the core training that all new councillors receive. So hopefully in 4 years' time, when we have the next cohort of councillors for the next elections, we can get corporate parenting training to be one of those key elements, core part of the training. So really, just to all members, just to plea that this is really, really important. This is probably one of the most important things we do as councillors, and what we do here have a real impact upon the lives of a lot of young people and children who have suffered quite badly in their young lives. And I'll leave it at that because I'm starting to get a bit. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Whittington, for that insight. Much appreciated. Councillor Carter, I believe you have a question.
Thank you, Chairman. We obviously stay in touch with people up to a certain age, and then after the leaving care takes them to potentially 25. Is there any data after that? Because it's great that obviously many of our young children in care have been doing their degrees and things like that. But what about later on in life? Is there any government data or any data on any of our young people at all for later on in life? I've got a couple of more. I think the whole way through the report, there was some amazing examples of good practice from various different councils, be it whether it's the app, the youth-led inspections, the training flats, loads of good examples. And I was curious as to if the department has looked at some of those to implement and or anything like those, of any of those takeover days and things like that. Within each department, it says that this corporate parent needs to be at the forefront, always the children. Do we feel, you mentioned highways, do we feel that libraries is an area that we probably could consider the children possibly any more? And finally, on page 101, the example of North Somerset, how does that compare to our offering? And finally, just to say, Andrew, that was brilliant listening to you, and your passion was really impressive. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think Councillor Bradwell was to come in. Sorry, Andy.
But I was just going to say, as a visiting member myself for many years, and in fact, I'm now going to be another visiting member this time around for 4 years. I've been quite impressed with, and Andy's quite right, some of these young people have had a torrid time, and actually even when they're in their children's homes, I mean, our staff really are very supportive of them. And I know when I was visiting at Gainsborough, there was a number of adults who had been in that home who came back and brought their children there. So I think there is that attachment, not with everybody, but a lot of people who've been in the home or have been fostered will keep those relationships going as they get older. And it is very touching, because I was once there when a young lady came in with her 2 children, only toddlers, and it was really great to see how the staff welcomed them and made them feel at home, because they hadn't got anybody else. And I don't think we can understand how it can be.
Thank you for that.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, up to the age of 25, the data after 25, not really. The reason being that those young people, then adults and off into the world. And we try wherever possible to leave them alone to just live their lives and enjoy themselves. I'd just say, coming back what Councillor Bradwell said, I went out recently to some supported lodgings providers over on the East Coast, and I met some of the young people staying with some of our supported lodgings providers there. And whilst I was having a cup of tea, a 30-year-old person turned up with their kid who was an ex-care leaver who still pops in to have a coffee with the person who was their supported lodgings provider years ago. And she pops in all the time. And every time a new young person arrives in placement, she organises a welcome party and they have a picnic or something like that. So our care leavers are still coming back and being part of that service, and just that kind of that family support. I call it the potato test sometimes, and I'll tell you why. Is that I mean, when I first left home, I phoned my mum because I had no idea how to roast a potato. I just cut potato in half, peeled it, and put it in fat. It was disgusting. And this was before Google, before I could Google. I'm that old. I know it's difficult to believe, but I didn't know I had to parboil it. I didn't know how to do that. And what we can remember is our young people don't necessarily have those family connections. So how do we build that family connection so the potato test doesn't fail? They can actually phone someone about how to roast a potato. So yeah, suppose 25, unfortunately not. And takeover days, etc., our young people, our youth engagement, etc. We have all that, and a lot of that is led by Carolyn's team and the participation team. We absolutely do, and in the children in care teams and looked after the leaving care service, we have a participation worker called Ben, who primarily focuses his time engaging with young people, service design led by young people, our groups with young people to help kind of, like for example, our office space wasn't very, our young people said it wasn't very appealing, so we got a panel of young people in who picked some colours for us. We gave them a little bit of nurture and a bit of guide that maybe fuchsia pink and orange and green and black all on one wall was not a great idea, but they did pick some nice colours in the end. What was the last one? Do we feel? Okay. We do have virtual offers, we do have apps, and we have got the online core offer to care leavers. There's a core offer on our website that tells us exactly, there's a legal requirement for me to publish that core offer, and we do that electronically. So we are using platforms like that to make sure the information gets out there for young people. And the North Somerset, I'm sorry, I'm flicking through the government document. I can't find the North Somerset bit on it. Oh, if you could, she's just got it. Thank you, Caroline. So North Somerset. Oh, council, is this the council tax exemption bit? Yeah, well, we have, yep, we have council tax relief for care leavers across Lincolnshire, across all 7 districts. We negotiated that a couple of years ago, and all care leavers get council tax relief up to the age of 21. And most district councils are now moving it on to 25. I think it was North Kest Stephen just said, actually, why don't we just do this through to 25 anyway? And then, of course, the other district council saying, yeah, that's a great idea. Every young person gets a new homes grant of £2,000 they can access. We don't give them cash, but what they have is they have access to that new homes grant of £2,000. They can spend that how they want with their leaving care worker. If a young person has a baby, very few of our young people have their own children, but they also get an extra £500 to help set up, and that's matched by the district council of an extra £500 to help settle, get young people set up into their own accommodation. We do pay for things like suits for job interviews, we'll buy a pair of shoes, a new coat, whatever. If someone's got a job interview, say, I haven't got a shirt and tie, we'll take them straight out shopping, or buy them a Tesco voucher, say, nip down to Tesco, here's a £20 voucher, go get some shirts, ties, pair of trousers, whatever it might be. Whatever our young people need, I will aim to provide it. I had a young person contact the other day who was £500 in debt because he thought he still got his bursary during the holiday when he was at college, and he doesn't. And he came to us, and he was very upset about it. And he's finding his own accommodation. He's doing really well in education. He's got a part-time job. And we said, don't worry, I've got some money. I'll help pay for that. So we paid that debt for him. So he didn't have to use his new homes grant to pay for a debt that was a mistake. Young people make mistakes. He made a mistake, so we helped him out. We didn't leave him on his own. And thank you for comments about the presentation. I hope that answered them.
Thank you very much, Andy. I believe we've got a couple more questions indicated. Ms. Sayre, you have a question.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, another congratulations on the presentation. It was great that you were taking personal ownership of these issues, and I think that the one way in which you can and should be supported, there was a lot of district councillors here in the room, and hearing that young people aren't getting free access to resources and facilities is, I'm sure, something that can be taken up afterwards. So we should draw everybody's attention to that. Really delighted as well to hear that children in care aren't being criminalised over damage and things in care homes. That was one of the first things that I mentioned when I first started on this scrutiny committee. So I'm really pleased to see that that's been taken care of. Just one thing about the presentation, I just wanted to check. You said that they're overrepresented in homelessness statistics. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, it's believed that about 25% of the homelessness cohort across the UK care experience. We're saying there's a quarter of our homelessness statistics across the UK are care experience. So actually, again, if we bring it down to that 1% come into care, and then a quarter of those that experience homelessness have been in care, that's where we say they're overrepresented.
Right.
It's just a stark, it stands out loud and clear
Yeah,
that care
yeah.
experience people sometimes end up homeless. Again, I say, look at our statistics, not Lincolnshire young people, but other areas really do struggle with that one.
That's great. Thank you so much. That was all.
Thank you for that. And Councillor Matthews, I believe you have a question.
I do. Andy, that was an excellent presentation. And I have absolute confidence that we are doing everything that we can with regard to looked after children. And but I'm going to appear to be pedantic now. I don't think we've received a report. I think we've received an information pack. And there is no hint of criticism here, because what I'm going to ask is, might it be possible for the benefit of councillors who are not on children's services, but are corporate parents who are not on the corporate parent, to receive something like this that's contextualised in exactly the way that you've just done verbally by saying we do this, we give to 500, but actually produce a report that shows how we respond to these principles. That would be a useful document to inform everybody about their corporate parenting, but also about how we are responding. And I know we respond to it really well, so there's no hint of criticism there. So I would like a report, in other words, but I don't want to create a load of work. I would also like to think that we could have corporate parenting ambassadors in every scrutiny committee, and the chair could ask for nominations on that, and that would be easily done. And once those ambassadors are created, then they directly link with our lead on that, either through Heather or directly with the officer. And as a councillor, I guess I'm surprised, because my conscience is pricking me now. I've not been out and visited any. Sorry. I've not been out and visited any of the children.
Sorry about that.
That I look after as a parent. And I would appreciate that opportunity. And I don't know how it would work. I simply don't know how it would work. But I go and see my granddaughter in Hampshire, you know, and take her a present and do all those things because she's my granddaughter, and I see my son at the same time. I did want to say something really interesting about the notion of where is home. My parents both died in COVID in April last year, and my brother and sister and I decided that we would take the funeral cortege from the care home, and the care home staff were thrilled to bits, because that had never happened before. Because when people die in care homes, more often than not, the funeral procession comes from the home of the previous home, or the home of the daughter or the son. And it is really interesting how you form a relationship. It's not a direct parallel, but that idea that people to go, that's their home. It's not where they used to live in the sense of my parents. And so we made that decision, and the staff who are professional really appreciate that, because they don't get that. So again, how we can link with those homes as a person. So absolutely no hint of criticism whatsoever, but I would love there to be a report about what we do set against the context and the criteria of the principles. And I know that we'll come out smelling of roses and gold plated. Thank you.
Do you have a comment on that, Andy?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really sensible suggestion, actually, to have a look at what the corporate parenting principles say and how, and then kind of measure LCC up alongside those with our partners. And maybe what that would do as well is identify some gaps to bring back to members as well, to show where some of those service gaps are. So I can pick up with Heather afterwards and we can have a conversation and bring something back to scrutiny.
Yep. And then the only thing I wanted to add was about the visiting. So I think one of the things, we have to manage that really carefully, because as Andy's outlined, the people who are having those relationships are through those services that we've got, and the young people know them. And so we try and manage really sensitively the visiting, and Councillor Bradwell referred to the visiting members. So we have got members who are linked to children's homes. They regularly go, they're known, they have Sunday lunch there, they know the young people. So I think in terms of managing that, I think we just need to think about that really carefully, because what we don't want is lots of people visiting what are these young people's homes, However, we do have the big conversation, and that's an opportunity really for all members to get involved with going into their local areas and connecting up with the young people, so that you can hear firsthand what they're happy about, what they're worried about, and what they feel needs to happen next. So if I suggest that we circulate the big conversation, and we would love to see a really good representation at that to get our young people involved, that would be great.
Thanks very much, Heather. I think that's a very good point. I think it's coming up fairly shortly, the big conversation, if I remember right. I know I've got it in my diary, and I would hope other members would do the same. Councillor Matthews made some very interesting suggestions, and I think we need to look at taking on board some of those suggestions, and we need to look at that, and appreciate your comments, Councillor Matthews. I think there's some great ideas in that. I think Councillor Gray, you wish to make a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to share an observation and make a comment. I was a Bernarda's parent for a number of years, and we provided supported lodgings. Bernarda's are a very caring and supportive organisation. But some of these young people that we looked after over the years, my ex-wife and I, we're still in contact with, and Bernarda's are still there to support me. So even though I'm no longer a Bernarda's parent and I don't provide supported lodgings, they are there to support me. And you build long-lasting relationships. I have a son, and my son is still in contact with some of those young people who are in our care, and he has been a great support to some of those young people. One of those young people in recent years wanted to change their name. They wanted no connection to their birth parents because of a horrid time they had. And so I was able to help with that, and Bernarda's were there to help and support me. So I just wanted to share that Bernarda's are a great organisation. I know the County Council works very closely with them, but they still support me because they know I'm still in contact with those young people that were in my care. Well, they're not so young now, some of them are in their 30s, of course, but they still see me as their parent, as their dad. And so, because they may not have had a dad, or they couldn't recognise the dad in the past, so I am their dad, I get Father's Day cards from some of those young people. So it's very, very nice to see. But I just wanted to share that Bernarda's are still there and are still supporting me, even though I'm no longer really in contact with Bernarda's on a professional basis, but they are to support me. So they're still supporting those young people way into those 30s because they're helping me to support them. So I just wanted to share that. But I think we had Councillor Kelly who also just indicated.
Fine, that's great. Thanks very much. Apologies, I'll say that again for the tape, as it were. Just coming back to the 27th of October big conversation, it is actually, I've been advised, limited in numbers, and in fact 3 of us have been sort of nominated to do that. That's myself, Councillor Gray and Councillor Rowe. Now, Councillor Rowe, I think you indicated, did you want to ask a question?
More a comment more than anything. As chair of the corporate parenting panel, it's great to work with Andy. It's the second presentation I've seen in my time as a councillor here, and the passion never dies. This is my second session as a councillor, and until this session and being involved now, I didn't understand fully the responsibility as a councillor of corporate parenting. It's great that we've got another training session. I think the big challenge is to get as many councillors to attend that as is possible. So I think if we can make sure our fellow councillors are aware of it and aware of how important it is, I think that would be good. So really, thank you, Andy. We'll keep working together, I hope, and keep pushing, and let's see if we can get as many councillors to that training as is possible. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rowe. Yes, I fully support what you say there. We'll try and get as many people as possible.
Yeah, just to say, in terms of the big conversation, I think that's due to the COVID restrictions at the minute. Janice is on the line, and she's just messaging me on Teams to say that's something that we're reviewing. And so it might not be for this one, but we certainly, it's in normal circumstances, we like as many people as possible to attend. So if you leave that with us, we'll come back and we'll see how we can get that engagement.
That's great. Thanks very much for the update on that, and we look forward to better times ahead when we can have more people present at them. Do we have any further questions indicated? No, no. Well, thank you for that. The actions that were required of this committee were to review and comment on the report, though I note Councillor Matthews' comments as regards the term report, and presentation, which of course we've all agreed has been excellent, and thanks Andy for that. And the other part we had to do was consider our role and how best to enhance and discharge corporate parenting duty, and I think most people agree one of the greatest responsibility anybody can have is the care of a child, whether as your own child or, as our case, a corporate parent. So I think that's a message that needs to go out to all our fellow members within the council, that we need to push that point, as Councillor Rowe has indicated. I therefore propose that the committee has reviewed the report presentation and our comments be noted, and I think we've had some extensive and very informative comments from members this morning. So can I ask if you could raise your hand if you agree with that recommendation? Please. Thank you, that's agreed, and thanks again, Andy. Sorry, by all means. We now move on to item 7, which is the Children's Services Annual Statutory Complaints Report for 2021. And this item sets out the annual complaints report for children's services in relation to children's social care. I'd like to welcome Carolyn Knight, Head of Service, Quality and Standards and Principal Social Worker, who's attending today in the Council Chamber to present the report. So it's over to you, Carolyn.
Good morning. Thank you for the introduction. So this is, I'm here to talk to you today about the annual complaints report for children's services. In respect of the County Council, there are 3 separate procedures for children's services by which complaints are managed. So we have the statutory complaint process, which I'll come on to in a moment, school complaints and corporate complaints. So school complaints, as it says on the tin, it's about schools, and corporate complaints are any complaints to do with any aspect of children's services that is not social care. So there is a duty on the local authority to produce an annual report about social care complaints, and there are clear criteria as to who can actually make complaints under this process, which include child, young person, parents, foster carers, special guardians, and basically any person who has sufficient interest in a child's welfare to warrant a complaint being considered. So the process for children's services in the council is that we have a feedback team based corporately who manage all the complaints, and the report before you today, the annual complaints report, was actually written by the complaints manager based in that service. They also manage not just complaints but comments and compliments, and I will come on to compliments later on. You'll see from the report that there are several stages involved in managing complaints, and around 2 years ago we took the decision to move to a more restorative way of managing complaints. So rather than when workers were out and families indicated that they weren't happy with something, we'd just give them a complaint leaflet and say, there you go, that's who you need to contact, make a complaint. That's not very satisfactory, really. And we took the decision that when somebody indicates that they are not happy with the service they are receiving from us, or happy in the way that people are communicating with them or working with them, whatever the issue is, that the manager for the team responsible actually reaches out and has a conversation with the person that's wanting to raise an issue. And what we found, as you'll see from the report, is that that's made a massive difference, and that actually a lot of our contacts, potentially would have been complaints historically, are managed to be resolved at an earlier stage. For young people who might want to raise issues, they can have access to independent advocates. As Andy talked about earlier, all our children in care have an allocated independent reviewing officer. For all our residential homes, there's a Reg 44 officer who visits once a month and inspects the homes and has a duty to speak to the young people who live there and get their views and comments. And obviously every child open to children's services has an allocated social worker. When thinking about complaints, we have to consider that the children and families who we work with don't always necessarily choose to be involved with social care. It's not as if you can, say, oh, I didn't fancy Marks and Sparks, so I'm going to go to Waitrose today. If you live in Lincolnshire, it's Lincolnshire social care that they have to be involved with. So it's a really good news story, this report. You'll see from the report there were no complaints from our children in care at all in the year 2020 to 2021. There were 13 issues raised by parents. 1 was resolved informally and 12 entered the process, but were all resolved at the stage 1. So just reflecting on the fact that the year 2020-2021 was the start of the year, we were all in lockdown with COVID. Massive changes to the way we all worked and we all practiced. We suddenly found ourselves having to do things online. We didn't necessarily have the technology at that stage. We did quite quickly get Zoom, but Teams didn't come along. So it was a massive change for everybody. And the national context has been that complaints across the board have increased. So I'm really pleased to be able to announce that in this year for Children's Services, we saw the lowest number of complaints we've ever had in 10 years. And we're happy to take that. And so we had 136 contacts. 45 of these were resolved without them going into stage 1. And if you think at the end of the year 2021, there were 2,849 children open to social care. That's at the very end. So during the year, there'd have been some coming in, some going out. It's 3% of those children and families and parents have raised issues. So very, very small proportion. So of the 91 complaints that actually went into the formal process, 69% were not upheld. So when they were looked into, there was found there was no issues, no case to answer really. 20% were partially upheld and 11%, which is only 10 complaints for the whole year, were actually fully upheld. Of these 10, 4 of them, or 40%, was due to lack of communication, 4 was due to staff conduct and attitude, and 20 were due to a delay in service. In relation to the 18 partially upheld complaints, very similar issues really. 8 of them were down to delay in service, 7 assessment errors, and 3 due to lack of communication. You'll see from the report, so I'll answer this before you ask me about it, that there are 3 areas that have got higher complaints, which were Lincoln and the 2 East Lindsey teams. Now, Lincoln is a larger team, so there are more children open to them. So statistically, we'd probably expect there to have more. But in response to these higher numbers, the heads of service for those areas have taken the information the feedback team have collated and are working with the team managers for those teams and reviewing them to see if there is any learning from them. And I know from some of the East Lindsey there were some issues with children moving over the borders, and then there was a change in the way that Lincolnshire managed the case as opposed to North Links or North East Links. Another good news story is that only 1 complaint escalated to stage 2. And that stage 2 is still ongoing, but that's a significant reduction on previous years. And there were 11 referrals to the LGO, but only 2 cases found fault with Lincolnshire, which is down from 5 the previous year. So again, good news story. I mentioned earlier on about the feedback team should collate, well, they do, to be fair, collate compliments, not should, they do collate compliments. I think it's fair to say that we've not been brilliant in children's services at collating these and sending them through to them. So we haven't included them in this report this year. We do get a lot of compliments, believe it or not, because we have some excellent staff and some excellent services. So we've agreed at the Quality Assurance Board that we will review the process, because you can only count in external compliments as well. So it has to be people that compliment us from outside of local authority. It can't just be me saying, oh, Andy's done a good job today. That doesn't necessarily count, but we just need to get better at doing that. We know we do. So that's a priority for us going forward, that we start to address that. So I think that's all I have to say on the matter.
Thank you very much. It's a very encouraging report, to say the very least, Carolyn. I think that's marvellous. Councillor Gray, do we have any questions on the report?
No one indicating, Mr. Oh, sorry,
we do have Councillor Matthews.
It's an arithmetic question. Thank you for. It's not about on the complaints per area. That did look odd to me. 18 in Lincoln, and I come from East Lindsey, and I don't know if I'm in East Lindsey South or East Lindsey North, but if you take that collectively, that's 27 complaints. But you, in mitigation, you said that there were larger teams. Might it be possible to couch this as with an additional graph or something that shows that actually there's 143 staff in Lincoln, and so the complaints per staff are 0.002? Yeah. Right. Do you understand what I'm saying? Thanks very much.
We'll certainly look at amending that next year, because, yeah, it does stand out, doesn't it? But when you look at how many children there are open to Lincoln, particularly, it's significantly more than the other teams. So that's fine. I'll do that.
Thanks, Karen. Do we have any further questions?
Yes, Councillor Carter.
Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Chairman. Just two little small ones. Well, actually, first one is a comment. I do agree that early resolution is a good thing, of course. Do I actually accept that it means that we haven't had the same amount of complaints in? No, I don't think I do. I think those 145 contacts or whatever it was, that's in my mind as to what the complaints are, because someone got to that stage and was frustrated enough. And yes, the manager reached out at that point. But I guess my point is it still should have possibly have been earlier than that. Equally, in the scheme of things, it's actually still a small number of complaints actually in the whole scheme of things. So it's not to say it's terrible, it's just that I take a slightly different angle on that. My other point or question would be on page 130. On point 8, there was, I think, 11 referrals that were made to the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman. In 2 of those cases, fault was found. Most of the time when cases move on to the next stages, it's because we're saying, no, there wasn't a fault, so therefore it's not being upheld at that stage, so it's moving on. So I guess on those 2, were we saying we wasn't at fault? And can I have some more background, possibly information on that to put it into context as to then later fault was found? Thank you.
Okay. You can actually make a complaint to the LGO at any time. It doesn't have to go through our all the stages and then it goes to LGO. And I have got some more details if you'd like on those 2 complaints. So one of them was in relation to an age assessment that was done on a unaccompanied asylum seeker, and they didn't agree with the outcome. And sometime later, after they'd reached 18 and were no longer in the care of the local authority, they'd raised issue that had then actually meant services were not available to them. So they challenged that, and fault was found in the way we didn't apply the correct procedures. And the other one was in relation to a child in care and failure to provide suitable full-time accommodation. Not accommodation, education, sorry, education, which again was resolved. But I haven't actually got the details to whether they went through, but every stage. I don't think they did, because I don't think we've had any gone through all those stages and then go to the LGO. We've usually tried to resolve it before they get there.
Thanks for the question, and thanks, Karen, for your response. I don't believe we have any further questions or comments. I've just got a couple of things to mention, Carolyn. I may have missed it when I was reading through the papers. On page 127, complaints per area, there's no actual sort of key as to what some of the, I can guess what some of the terms refer to on there, but I mean, CWD and ETDT, to a layperson looking at that, it's, you know, obviously people in the business know what it means, but I don't know whether that could be just tidied up a bit. But coming back to the remarks about compliments, I think it's vital that compliments are picked up on and conveyed to staff, because anyone in any service, you do get complaints from time to time, which you accept. But compliments, I think, are a great sort of morale boost for people to actually get a compliment sent to them. And I would hope that, yeah, when you review your processes, that is part and parcel of what you do. Heather, are you indicating you want to say something?
Yeah, that's a bit of a holy grail for me. I receive the compliments. Sometimes the managers will send me compliments that members of the public have sent in. And then when I get the report, there's no compliments in. And so I think it's the most common question I ask, oh, where are all the compliments that we receive throughout the year? So I completely agree. It's important that we reflect them back to staff and to the public, because we get some amazing feedback about, you know, things like Andy's been describing. People going the extra mile to support people, and we do need to capture them. And I would argue that we're not particularly great at capturing compliments across the council, as well as in children's services. We tend to deal with the complaints and not celebrate the compliments. I think it's something we can all continue to work on.
Thanks very much. I think that's something for everyone to look at, actually. As you say, across the council, perhaps we could bear that idea in mind, that whilst we obviously have to deal with complaints when they do occur, hopefully not too often, but compliments definitely, I think, are important for anyone working in any service, that to know that what they're doing has been recognised by a member of the public. I think that's excellent. If we have no further questions and comments, then just to remind everyone, the actions required of this committee are to review and comment on the annual complaints report for 2020-21, and note, as we have heard, the low number of complaints that were upheld or partially upheld. And I therefore propose that the committee has reviewed the annual report for 2021, and that the low number of complaints that were upheld or partially upheld be noted. And can you raise your hand if you agree with that proposal? That is agreed. Thank you very much. And thank you, Carolyn, for your report. And if we can move on to item 8, which is the Children and Young People Scrutiny Committee work programme. And this item sets out our work programme for 2021-22. And I'd like to invite Tracy Johnson, Senior Scrutiny Officer, to present the report. So it's over to you, Tracy.
Thank you, Chairman. I just have a few amendments to the 19th of November agenda, just to highlight to the committee. The pre-decision and scrutiny item on the expansion of St Lawrence School, Horncastle, has been deferred to the meeting on the 14th of January. This is to allow further work on the scheme. The Lincolnshire Safeguarding Children Partnership update has been removed from the agenda, and the next update from the LSCP will now be on the 22nd of April. And in addition, we have 2 additional pre-decision scrutiny items in relation to the Spalding Academy Basic Need Project and the Stamford Welland Academy Basic Need Project. And these are both prior to a decision by Councillor Boothroyd between the 22nd and 30th of November. That's it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks very much, Tracy. I'd like to invite members of the committee to speak on this report. Councillor Gray, do we have any indications?
No indication. Oh, sorry, Councillor Matthews.
Councillor Matthews, over to you.
I'm trying to ask a question on every point. I am sorry. As part of my new role, I am exploring public health, and I know that our education team have linked with the health team, but Professor Chris Whitty has just published a report on the health in coastal towns, and one of the factors is education. And I wonder if it might be possible in future to show the work we're doing to link early picking up of health conditions with public health. And I know Derek's coming later on to talk to this, but I don't think he's talking about that specific thing. So I just wonder if we could explore that, because I think that with putting health in a silo and putting education in a silo, and I know we're breaking that down, but actually we're missing out a lot of health issues that could be picked up within the education system and cross-referred. So I clearly, you know why I'm interested, because it's Mablethorpe, Sutton, Skegness are the East Coast towns that are struggling in terms of both health and in education. Thank you.
You make an interesting point. Do we have a comment, Heather?
Yeah, so we'll take that away, and then we'll talk to our colleagues in the public health team who work really closely with us, as Councillor Matthews says, and we'll move forward from there.
That's great. Thanks very much for that. We obviously have actions required of us as a committee, and they are, in this case, again, to review and agree the committee's work programme as set out in the report, which I think we have just done, and to highlight for discussion any additional scrutiny activity which should be considered for inclusion in the work programme. And again, I think that's been touched upon. So therefore, I'd like to propose that the work programme is agreed, and would you please indicate in the usual way if you're in favour? Thank you very much. That's agreed. I think we've had a very productive morning, and I thank all members for your contributions and suggestions and ideas. I think we've got a lot out of this meeting this morning, and some work to do in the future thanks to your contributions. So I really appreciate that. And I'd like to thank everyone else, the officers as well, for their input this morning. So I'd like to thank you for your attendance, and I look forward to seeing you in the 19th of November for our next meeting. Thank you very much.